so loud. Oh, that was Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you. Hold on. Yeah. Let's hear back again. Is it on? Oh man, you told me.
Okay, now the people on Zoom can hear me, and hopefully you all can hear me too. But thanks again for being here with us. Tonight's program is organized in conjunction with one of our current exhibitions, Cameo by Jamie Isenstein. And I know a few of you have worked on the exhibit and are continuing to perform in it. So thank you all for being here. Jamie is asking us to question what's real and what's not real, and asking if we can trust what we see. So maybe we'll find out tonight. Maybe we'll be more confused. I don't know, but we'll get there together. Tonight we are joined by the Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Enrico Pontelli. He's always an Aggie. Dean Pontelli received a Ph.D. in computer science from NMSU, in addition to his degrees from the University of Houston and the University of Udine. His research interests are in the areas of knowledge representation and reasoning, constraint solving and optimization, high performance computing, assistive technologies, and STEM education. In addition to his role as our Dean of Arts and Sciences, he is a Regents Professor of Computer Science and currently serves as the NMSU Senior Advisor for Artificial Intelligence. Next, we are joined by Micol Hebron, an interdisciplinary artist whose practice includes studio work, curating, writing, social media, crowd searching, teaching, public speaking, all of that alongside her individual and collaborative projects. She uses strategic consciousness raising, collaboration, generosity, play, and participation to support and further feminist dialogues in art and life. On top of all of that, and her very extensive exhibition record of exhibitions, performances, and lectures, she's an associate professor of art at Chapman University, the founder and director of the Situation Room Resource Space, the Gallery Tally poster project about gender equity in contemporary galleries, and the Digital Pasty Gender Equality Initiative for the Internet. In the past, she's been the chief curator at the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, the director of the UCLA Summer Art Institute, and an editorial board member at Extra Magazine. We're especially thankful that she was able to travel and join us here today. And maybe some are already familiar with everyone's favorite photography professor. Moderating this panel is Bree Lamb, Associate Professor of Photography here at NMSU. She holds an MFA from UNM, but we won't hold that against her, and a BFA from Pennsylvania State University. You can find her work all over the country, and tonight we're especially thankful that she's here moderating. So thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll see just how awkward I can be. Thank you, Eva, for including me in tonight's panel. Thank you to Dean Pontelli and to Professor Hebron, and thank you to everyone for being here. I just want to share a very brief background on why I'm here tonight as moderator, as I am not an AI expert by any means. To be honest, the topic of AI and art is one that I'm curious about. It's one that I'm also nervous about. Oftentimes, I feel overwhelmed by the sort of omnipresence of AI in this contemporary moment. I have lots of questions and apprehensions about AI in general and about AI within a creative context. AI is not part of my creative practice, and it's not integrated into my photography curriculum. But as photo faculty, I think that it's important that I do my due diligence in learning as much as possible about this burgeoning field, and to look at it holistically, to think about it critically, pedagogically, conceptually, and with a great deal of thought. And so, just since its inception, photography has always had a very complicated and tenuous relationship with truth and this idea of objectivity. And the medium's growth has always been intrinsically connected to technological advances. And, you know, photography holds a range of personal, social, political, historical context, and it's deeply connected to representation, and including misrepresentation and underrepresentation as well. So these are all areas of interest for me in terms of my research. And so, you know, with this massive wave of photo adjacent image generation, I think that many of these existing concerns within the field of photography have become even more complicated. So I'm not here as an expert. I'm here to learn. I'm here to listen. In our initial conversations, I was really excited about a lot of Professor Hebron's ideas and the ways that she's thinking of AI and imaging as a tool for a lot of different things in her practice and research and things of that nature. So we have questions that the UAM staff have developed, and we also have several questions that were submitted online by the public that we'll cover tonight. And so just as a general rule of thumb, if everyone could hold off on additional questions or comments until the end of the panel, that would be great. And we're going to save time for an audience Q&A at the end. So, okay, here we go. So, artificial intelligence, or AI, is often used colloquially as an umbrella term for many technologies and methodologies. What's the difference between AI, AGI, and ANI?
I can take it first.
Okay, great.
So, well, first of all, AI is not a new thing. AI has been around since the 50s. And right now, when people talk about AI, they typically talk about what is referred to as generative AI. So you prompt, use ChatGPT, your Gemini, you write some questions, you get some answers. That's really just a small component what AI is. AI is a very, very broad field that includes a lot of other things like computer vision, natural language processing, optimizations, reasoning. So it's a very broad and complex field. So it's very interesting that, so when I hear the word AI, as an AI researcher, I feel uncomfortable because they really mean something different than what I think about AI. Two terms that Bree mentioned was narrow AI and general AI. So narrow AI is really what you see today. So when you fire up your computer and you use ChatGPT, you're using narrow AI. When you actually go home and you actually expect your smart thermostat to kind of do the job that you want it to do, that's narrow AI. So narrow AI means that it's AI developed for one specific task. Okay, so your ChatGPT can actually answer your question, can help you come up with some ideas for your essay. It cannot tie your shoes. Okay. General AI means an AI that can really behave as, I don't want to say a human being because that's a bad comparison, but something that can solve any type of problem you can throw at it and do anything that you want it to do. General AI does not exist. Will it exist in the future? If you have a crystal ball, great. And if you have a stock that I can invest, I will do it. But right now, what we're dealing with is narrow AI. So AI designed to solve a specific task.
Okay, please.
Great. I'm glad you're here. I can't answer all three of those questions, but I will talk about the aspects of AI that I use and that I think are important, and about the very fact that being specific about our language is so important when we talk about AI. I think that there is a lot of kind of willful ignorance about it as we use AI as this umbrella term, and then it's very easy to throw up our hands and say, I don't know, like, and feel disempowered. So I find there to be power in language and in specificity. I think of generative AI, which is what I engage with mostly, as producing synthetic images, not photographs, not paintings, or maybe even algorithmic images or probabilistic images. So I use generative AI platforms to explore the large language models and data sets of images that are feeding the platforms such as Midjourney or Sora, for example. And what happens when we work with those platforms is that the algorithms are programmed to look for patterns, right? Look for patterns in language and image and give you these essentially predictions of the most likely next step, the most likely fusion. I mean, AI images are very much like an exquisite corpse of like images kind of compressed from the outcomes of what the algorithm decides are the most logical relative images from your prompt, for example. I also think that, and I studied and taught photo history for 10 years, so my engagement with AI is very much informed by the history of photography and by this legacy of falsifying images. As an artist, I think we're often very invested in ideas of truth and truthfulness and reality and consciousness and learning, which is all the things that AI is kind of invokes these queries, right? About what does it mean to learn? What is learning? What is creativity? What are the things? I mean, art, I think since we are talking about art, artists engage in the things that are the most human, right? These dreaming and fantasizing and creating and exploring and hypothesizing. And those are the things that I think in many ways the history of AI is trying to recreate, trying to automate, but I don't know that it will ever I hope it doesn't ever get there. I hope it doesn't ever really learn to think, feel, deceive, lie, etc. Anyway, I mean, I'm getting off track, but yeah, generative AI is what I use the most. It's what you see in the like outputs of ChatGPT or Midjourney, Sora, Anthropic, stuff like that.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so recently communities in southern New Mexico have generated many discussions about AI on the Project Jupiter data center that would be located approximately 37 miles from Las Cruces. Additionally, NMSU also recently launched the Institute for Applied Practice in AI and Machine Learning and is part of the New Mexico AI Consortium. What are our goals for this institute and collaboration? And what do these changes mean for NMSU students or for the broader Las Cruces community?
I guess that's for me, right?
I think so.
So let's see, where do we start? So let's start with the Institute. So the Institute has actually been an idea that came from our president, President Fermi. And it was kind of the result of an observation. He came, he's very interested in AI. He thinks that AI is an important skills that people need to have because it's going to be a kind of unexpected tool in the toolbox when people go and look for jobs after leaving the university. And one of the observations that he made was that there is actually a lot of AI at NMSU. There has been a lot of AI at NMSU for a long time. Actually, NMSU has a long legacy of work in AI that goes back to the late 70s and early 80s. That's good and that's bad. It's bad because it's everywhere. It's completely disconnected, completely siloed, completely lack of collaboration. So the idea of the Institute was, let's actually bring people together so that instead of people working in their little corner, we can actually collaborate and maybe do more interesting things. At the same time, there is also the realization, as I was mentioning earlier, that I would say that not talk about AI in the context of a university at this point it's unethical, because when people graduate from NMSU, they're going to be expected to know what AI is and how to use AI. And we have an obligation about not forcing AI, but teaching what are the proper use of AI and what are the not proper use of AI. AI is not the right tool for everything. There are situations where AI is very helpful. It can improve efficiency, it can help you navigating complex topics. There are areas where you really shouldn't be using AI. And it's an obligation as an education institution that actually we guide the students in navigating these situations and learn what are the proper use of AI and where AI really shouldn't be touched. So the goal of the Institute is to try to kind of develop opportunities, learning opportunities that actually are going to guide the students in this realm. It's not trying to impose AI on everybody. It's not saying every course should have AI, but it's really kind of, there are places where it fits and there are places where it doesn't fit. Bree also mentioned this New Mexico AI Consortium. New Mexico is an interesting state because we are a big state land-wise. We are a small state population-wise. We actually are the state in the US which has probably the highest Ph.D. per capita because we have 2 national labs, Los Alamos and Sandia. And there is a lot of AI going on there, lots of it. On the other hand, if we look around the nation, there is a lot of competition for AI. There are a lot of funding that is thrown around AI. We want to be competitive. And the only way to be competitive is not for NMSU doing its things, UNM doing its things, Los Alamos doing its things, but it's really working together. So the idea of creating the New Mexico AI Consortium is to create a collaboration between the 3 research universities, the 2 national labs, as well as actually also some of the community colleges in the state. And the idea is let's work together, let's collaborate, let's be competitive together at the national level instead of actually competing with each other and not being competitive outside of NMSU. It's basically putting New Mexico give to New Mexico the opportunity to be sitting at the table with everybody else instead of being left behind.
So interesting. I'm so glad that you're doing the AI initiative and having the conversations about where it's appropriate and where it's not appropriate and providing that opportunity. I think something that artists, and I'm conscious that I think we're probably mostly artists here. Something that I think artists can do is kind of question and be critical and like ask the important questions about like, is it appropriate to apply here? Is it not appropriate there? You can't do that if you don't know the language of the platform. So I think kind of learning the language of the platforms of AI is really important and understanding which forms of AI are being applied in what context. The AI that they're going to use in a biomedical lab is going to be very different than the AI that you're going to use in a graphic design lab, right? So understanding the objectives for each context and the platforms that or the programs and platforms that you would use and why can be really important. As far as becoming kind of job ready, like it's true that you're not going to be able to go into the workforce if you don't have at least a general knowledge of how and when and where AI is applied, if for no other reason than to resist it when you see it, if that's what you want to do, right? But they say that the best way to become AI proof is to do a lot of different eclectic things. Like if you become a specialized task master, that's a very easy thing for AI to take over, right? So if you're just doing one thing, and I think again, like people in the creative fields, as with like researchers, as with science folks, you are doing a lot of different things uniquely, and that's not something that can be replaced by AI, hopefully. At least not now. So understanding the language and the structure and the application, I think is really crucial. As far as I think New Mexico is it's so exciting to be here right now because of the lawsuit that Meta just lost that was brought by your attorney general. If you don't know about that, please look it up. I'm sure you do, but it's a pretty incredible moment. So Torres, is that his name, your attorney general? The lawsuit was to claim that Meta kind of knowingly harmed children with its practices. They were fined $375 million, which is nothing, right, for an AI company. But there was also a ruling that there could be, I think, injunctions made against Meta per what kind of remediation they would have to do moving forward, which is really important. That's the important part. It's not the like slap on the wrist fine. It's the part that they have been found guilty of knowingly causing harm with their structures, and that they've got to change it. I hope that more lawsuits come. I think that it's really great that your attorney general was like brave enough and steadfast enough to stick with it and bring the lawsuit and see it through. I only learned about the Jupiter project recently. And there's this horrifying trend across the country of big box stores emptying out, becoming detention centers, emptying out, becoming data centers. Like this repurposing of these large buildings is I think pretty grim. It's a $165 billion project that Oracle is taking over, as I understand it. The state of New Mexico got $50 million as a kickback from that. Also pretty small. So I'm in the email discussions, or the question that was posed is like, what do we do about it? And my first thought was, well, great. I hope that you can get in on the ground and have conversations with what's happening there so that things can happen responsibly and integrated with the citizens of New Mexico. But I also think it's an incredible opportunity to get very involved in local politics. I mean, there was no environmental impact report done for this data center. Was the community consulted at all even before the purchase was made? I'm guessing no. So I think it's I think this is true across the country, but I think it's a really important time for people to really step up and play a role in your local community as a representative, go to town hall meetings, talk to your senators, talk to your congressmen. I just think, yeah, that's as far as I got with that, but
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, here we go. So on our campus, we have one of Solowit's only public sculptures. And in the arts, we've seen artists and movements that rely on prompt engineering to create and activate artworks. In other words, artists give directions that others interpret to create the artwork. So is AI a creative tool, and does it leave room for students or creators to innovate within their own disciplines and research? I know this is something you're particularly interested in. So
yeah. So again, I would say let's use the specific language, like is generative AI a creative tool? Because other forms of AI are research tools or analytical tools or statistical, probabilistic tools. Stats was my worst subject in college, by the way. So it's ironic that here I am embedded in AI many years later. Is it a creative tool? I mean, that's also a really broad question, but I think a couple of things. One, as far as prompt engineering and that like prompts as an assignment, like as artists, you give yourself assignments all the time, right? You have to come up with the assignment. Like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to make? And what do I want to show with what I'm making? What do I want the viewer to get? That's a prompt, right? That's essentially a prompt. If you've studied the Fluxus movement, Flux scores are very much like early prompts. I mean, Solowit's coming out of conceptual art, but I think that conceptual artists, capital C, are also using a form of scores.
Sure.
There's like a set of instructions that can be widely interpreted, right? And so I do use generative AI in that way. I'm very interested, not in using it as a replication tool. Absolutely not. I don't need a Xerox machine. I don't need something to do it for me. It's like Goethe's Sorcerer's Apprentice, like we're just like give it some instructions, but you don't tell it to stop and things get out of control. I'm very interested in playing around with language and playing around with prompts. So a lot of the prompts that I give are very simple, like 3 words, because I'm curious to see what comes out of the large language models and what is evidenced to me by those outputs. I know, for example, that it's extremely misogynistic. Like the outputs are, it's young, sexualized, skinny, white, able-bodied women generally when I prompt for women. There's a lot of double standards, but that's all coming from the data sets, right? So I think of it also as a mirror, like how can I play around with prompts to have the platforms be their own mirrors, reflecting to me what's inside the data set. And that then starts to give me an indication of how we might need to change the data sets or add to them or seed them. I know you're really concerned with copyright in that regard. Like, what is it pulling from, and how are artists affected by having their work scraped by these data sets? Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. So, generative AI is based on models that have been trained, and they've been trained pretty much with any type of form of information that is out there. So the entire web has been used. Everything that is out there has been used to train the models. So the fact that we get really horrible results to some prompts, like for example, if you ask the question of, give me the image of a scientist, what do you get is a white man with a white coat. If you ask the image, give me the image of a nurse, you typically have a female figure coming out. There was a beautiful example, for example, of the Google translation system, which is actually it's pretty good if you try. And try to translate sentences from Hungarian to English. Hungarian doesn't have genders. And you will see kind of that there is a bias there. You ask the Hungarian question about who is actually I don't remember. Something about a doctor, and it comes out as he is a doctor. And if you ask a nurse, she is a nurse. So there is all these gender biases that are implicit there. But really, one of the big concerns is copyrighted. And we already have some examples of, for example, Claude from Anthropic was actually trained. Somebody had the bright idea of training using LibGen. Are you familiar with LibGen? LibGen is a Russian website that actually distributes illegal copies of pretty much any book that you can think of. So if you don't want to pay, what can you say? I didn't say that. You can find it on LibGen. And somebody had the bright idea of actually using LibGen, all these books that are there, to train the model. So people who owns copyright of their books, they actually suddenly kind of had their copyright violation. And there was a lawsuit that actually the authors won. So actually, anybody who can go on Anthropic and see if their book is there, they can get $3,000, which is probably nothing for Anthropic, but is a sign that people start realizing that there are copyright violations. Now, it's somewhat easier when we talk about text, because somehow text may be actually easier to see where it's coming from. But let's think about images. When you're actually using a book that is full of photographs to train your models, then you don't realize that you're giving away your photographs. When you post your photographs on social media, you probably didn't read the fine prints. You are losing pretty much the rights of all those images. And now suddenly those images can somehow show up when somebody asks a prompt question. An artist that want to protect their own copyrights now have a very, very hard time. So things like watermarks, things like metadata are going to become really, really important. But the bottom line is that right now AI is not what we typically call explainable. So you put a prompt, for example, to generate an image, you get an image, you really don't know why that image is coming out and not why something different. Researchers have been trying to figure out how to make AI explainable so that you can kind of go back and trace what are the sources that led to produce what you have. But it's very, very difficult just because of the sheer amount of data that have been used to train these models. So IP copyrights are going to be really, really hard to protect. And there are tools that actually have been developed to try to kind of help, for example, in the case of image processing, but still we're far away from being satisfactory.
Yeah. Well, there is a question specifically about that. Maybe I'll skip because it just is one more element, I think. So, but I guess Grok is also facing many lawsuits regarding people whose image and likeness were used without consent. And so we've talked about this a little bit, but just, what does this mean for artists and creatives? Is it possible to maintain intellectual property? You're touching on that already, but what can everyday people do to protect their creative property or remove images that they don't want on the internet? Is there a mechanism for that? I'm not sure. When we spoke briefly, I had mentioned that I think my limited knowledge was just that like only major corporations with trademarked entities like a cartoon character or something, it's easier to identify and then you can opt out.
Yeah.
And then so if they're using your thing and then throwing it in, they're mashing it up and throwing it into this big thing, it's going to be much harder for any of us to say, oh, that's my, pull that out. That's my lighting technique or that's my. So anyway, if you have anything else that you'd like to share about that, I know you both talked about that a bit. So
I do want to add some things. I'm very interested in what's not in these data sets. Like what are the things that aren't already a preset in these worlds of AI? And that would be like your personal experiences, your memories, physical sensations, right? Haptic things. And conversely, I think a lot about what there is a proliferation of. So in the first year or two of publicly accessible generative AI, so 22, 23, the number of references to Shakespeare and Moby Dick. And it's like, oh, right, because the whole history of like great literature has been reinforced as being these like European white men. And then there have been so many editions of publications of these literary greats, right? So that there's a radically disproportionate amount of data that references a few authors and a few artists. So on the one hand, I would love to see many, many more diverse voices added to those data sets so that when it's generating something, it is not constantly just reiterating that same like cis hetero patriarchal normative perspective. And then ditto with images. I think we all know by now that the majority of images online is pornography. So it's not shocking that anytime I ask for iterations of images of the female body, that it just gets increasingly sexualized with every variation. I would love the right to have that not happen. And that gets me to this issue of consent. I mean, I think there's so much about consent with regard to social media and digital media and AI that we need to talk about. And we're often not really given a choice. Like you can't compete in the marketplace as an artist without being on LinkedIn, Tumblr, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Like you just can't, right? Like that's how, but as soon as you make an account, you're done. Like your data, you have let go of your data, of anything that you post on there, but not just anything that you post on there, anything that you do online while you have any of those apps open, right? So, and you've also given away all of your friends' data in the process. So this issue of consent, like I would love for there to see a way for consent to be built in. I mean, you mentioned the Nudify apps and the deepfakes. Is there a way that we can program or require the AI kind of oligarchy to opt in, like have a consent, like an opt-in consent option? And I think about also this hierarchy of wealth and privilege that happens. Like if you have enough money, like Taylor Swift or Justin Bieber, you can have all of those horrifying things scraped from the internet. But if you're a regular person, you don't have the right to be forgotten, as they say, right? And like once it's up there online, it's there forever. And then those images contribute to the next data set. Right. So it becomes this proliferating exponential problem. And we rapidly approach what's called model collapse, right? These sort of feedback loops where the outputs are generated exclusively from its own already generated content. So we're getting into an ever more synthetic and biased world.
No, that's fantastic. Just a couple of more comments. First of all, the European Union has added a right to be forgotten clause, but it's still very difficult to implement, especially because a lot of the platforms are not based in Europe, but they're based in the US, where we don't have those kind of legislation. Deepfakes are a big problem. There have been a lot of legislations and bills that have been put forward to try to kind of force reveal the use of AI. So if you have an image that has been AI generated, there should be an expectation that people are aware that this is an AI generated image, is not a real photograph. But a lot of those bills have failed, and because there are large corporations that don't want their hands tied. The other thing that is really scary is, of course, we know that generative AI produces hallucinations. We know generative AI has biases, gender biases, racial biases. Why? Because those models have been trained with a lot of things that are available on the internet, which are biased. And they are coming typically from a very limited geographical areas, which also raise the issue of equitable representation within AI. So there were some beautiful examples. For example, facial recognition. It's becoming very, very widely used. You have a lot of airports, for example, that now use facial recognition for you to actually get on board of your plane. There are examples, for example, in Europe of facial recognition that was used to actually try to identify people that may be suspect and not allow them to board the flight. And it turned out that, for example, all the people from a certain country were flagged as potential terrorists just because of the way they were presenting themselves and the way that actually the facial recognition system was trained. It was biased, and it was biased against a particular group. So the fact that actually all the models are coming from a limited geographical areas, trained with biased data, is really creating a situation that is very, very dangerous. And it has really the potential of damaging the life of people, which is something that we have an obligation to try to stop and address. And how to address it? Have more representation on the data that are actually used to train these models. And as a user, when you create your prompts, you should actually try to inject in your prompt something that forces the system to go outside of the standard.
I want to say that in the United States, when you go to an airport, you still have the right to refuse to have your photograph taken, and you should exercise that right, please. If there is no consequence, you just say, I would like to not have I would like to refuse the photo. And it says on there that you can refuse, but nobody, like, they're so intimidating that you don't recognize that that's possible, but you can absolutely refuse. On the note of consent, I want to return, and this kind of facial recognition, I want to return or at least visit the idea of meta glasses, which are now also everywhere, and nobody is being asked consent for that. Them, you're filmed all the time. Likewise, doorbell cameras like Ring and Nest are now partnered with companies like Axon and Flock, which are the companies that make the kind of body cam hardware and software worn by ICE and police. So that cute Super Bowl ad where you could find your dog, don't worry if he gets out, like, all the Ring cameras are now networked. We are the dogs, my friends. Like, it's not like we are the dogs. So,
Yeah.
and there's cameras in vending machines, right? There's facial recognition and snack vending machines.
Really?
Yes. So they can, and then so there's two threads that there's
Don't worry
two.
about what I'm getting. Just let me get my snack.
Yeah. Well, they know what you're getting when you're getting it and where you've been right before that or after that, because any credit card that you use is going to track that. And that's also connected to now, like, the dynamic pricing labels. Have you seen these? Horrifying, right? So you pair dynamic price. If you don't know what that is, that's where places like Walmart or supermarkets, you see the digital price tags on the shelves that, you think that it's changing just based on supply, but no, it's changing based on what they know your pain points are. So if they know exactly how much you will pay, you specifically, not someone like you, but you specifically, they will know how much you're willing to pay for whatever product, and that will price it at that point. You can look it up. This is happening also with airplane flights.
That's
Just
crazy.
they know.
I thought I was making my students paranoid when I talk
Sorry,
about
friends. It's not
Google
yeah,
Earth
that's just-
everywhere, and every time you go to a convenience store or you leave the house, how many times is your image taken? How many do you have control over those? How do they? Now I got a lot more. I'm gonna have a hard night's sleep tonight. But anyway,
CV Dazzle, my friend, CV Dazzle. It looks so cool. And also, I didn't mention, I just want to say, like, this idea of stealing people's stuff, like the class, hopefully you all know about the Euphoria, the photographer whose work was stolen for Euphoria. I mean, this happens and so there's, and now I'm forgetting her name, which is embarrassing. Young photographer, artist who was invited out to Hollywood to work on art direction and developing Euphoria for 5 months. And after those 5 months, they said, actually, thanks, like, you're too young to be on this. I think she was 23, not too young, which is a show about that generation, right? Thanks, but no thanks. And I think Sam Levinson's the director. And then, like, 6 months later, she sees a billboard with her photos advertising the show. Look that up too. So, like, this, really infuriating, right? It's a colonialist model.
okay, need a minute. No, these are really important. And I think, like, again, I sort of started with my paranoid rant at the beginning, but it is there. I have this knee-jerk reaction of like, ooh, it's too much. Like it's overwhelming. It's too much. And like, we talk about a lot of other technologies in the courses that I teach. I'm not afraid of those, but I think you're right. I think the answer is in sort of educating ourselves, knowing the languages, being specific, knowing our rights, sort of challenging systems, all of that stuff. And it starts with sort of knowledge base. So I guess I'm gonna have to get more involved with the AI Institute. I was like, no. But I do think there's ways for collaboration, ways for us to at least think about it, like be thoughtful, and then opt out when we don't want. So, okay, fine. I make a homework assignment for myself, but, okay. So let's see here. I think you guys answered that one well. This other one. So let's go back here. What about, okay, so artists and photographers, especially, are at the forefront of discussions surrounding authenticity and documentation. You've talked about this a little bit, that you don't consider AI a photographic medium. I also don't. It's image adjacent, or it's something along those lines. But as artists in general, as makers, as non-photographers as well, what ways, can we ensure that we use AI technologies in our practices in ethical ways, not sacrificing artistic integrity or putting our own creativity at risk? That's a subjective question, but if you have, thoughts on ways to begin thinking about it as a creator.
Yeah, I mean, before I get to that, I want to circle back for a minute to the Institute, because I
Sure.
think based on, what you both just said, I think it's so important to think of something like this AI Institute as an opportunity to be thought leaders in what is needed. How do you address the copyright problem? How do you collaborate between arts and sciences? How do you be proactive about asking the questions and solving those problems, rather than just following along, rather than saying, oh, but how can we use it? I don't know. I mean, rather than just being like following and applying what's there, to be the real innovators, to see the problems, or the potential goals or exciting areas, and to write that. Like at many universities that I'm seeing, my own included, the primary conversations around AI on campus have been like, well, let's keep people from plagiarizing. And we're like 5 years too late, I mean, it's embarrassing, right? So instead, like, why not like get out ahead of it and use the opportunity to kind of coalesce and collaborate? I mean, I think we need each other. We need, like, artists need programmers need artists, we need poets in there, we need historians in there. It has to be a collaborative endeavor. So on the note of using it creatively, I do think it changes when you think of generative AI as a medium unto itself, rather than like a replicator. Like, I'm not interested in it as a replicator, nor am I interested in it as an efficiency tool. I mean, I think we're sold this productivity narrative all the time by big tech. It's like, oh, it'll make it so much faster, which is a total lie. But also, who wants to do more work? Like you say, like, oh, it'll help you do more work, basically, is what they're saying, right? Like, we're going to help you do your job more. No, thank you. I don't like, I'm not cool with that. I don't want that outcome at all. So I think like, I love I think the hallucinations are great, because like that reveals the structure, right? I was kind of bummed when the like each new iteration of, say, Midjourney would come out, because like the 6-finger problem, give me 7 fingers. I don't want it to give me 5 fingers. Like, I want 7 fingers. That is the aesthetic of synthetic AI, of synthetic images. Like, that's the tell. And I think those glitches are actually really important. I also think those offer like inroads into like finding the weaknesses or the vulnerability points, or potential hacking. Like, how can you hack this idea that we have a proliferation of porn in these data sets? What do we do? I mean, like, I love asking it to generate things that it just absolutely can't figure out, or things that have been prohibited previously, like on TikTok, for example. Anyone who showed period, this was like maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, like, you couldn't show period blood, right? Like, human. And likewise in art history, there's no pictures of birth. think about that? Like, what are the things that we systematically, historically have refused to show or represent? So I'll ask it to represent those things. These images are like, I wanted it to show me a tampon ad, and it comes up with this like American Horror Story type plastic pink craziness because there's no precedent. It's like, oh no, we'll try to figure it out. And that I think is pretty cool. Like, how do you reveal these weirdnesses and these hallucinations? I mean, I think there are a lot of ways to use it creatively. I don't advocate using it to like shorten your job. Yeah, like I advocate really think about what is the medium of AI and work with it in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I use AI all the time just because it helps me thinking. So I don't use it to replace me. I use it to kind of bounce and help me figure out what is the next question that I should be asking. And that's really one thing that we really should try to figure out, how to actually use it to improve critical thinking, to be critical about what comes out and deliver the next question, which is the next question. Because to me, problem solving is always asking the right questions. And that's the difficult part of the job. Going back to something we were talking about earlier, one of the things I'm very concerned is the issue of deep fakes. To me, that is kind of blurring a line that is dangerous in many situations, and we have seen it in the news all the time. So the fact that we don't have regulation, we don't have policies that actually forces people to reveal what is synthetically generated and what is not is a dangerous path that kind of we need to figure out how to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this history of deepfakes goes far beyond, like it's much older than AI, right? Baudrillard writes about it and in The Procession of Simulacra. Daniel Boorstin writes about the like pseudo event and this construction of the illusion coming out of government. I mean, and if you think about Baudrillard talking about the manipulation of simulacra, the manipulation of truth by way of simulacra, it's a power tool. If you don't know what's real or what's not, you become disempowered, right? If you can't tell what's what. The people who hold the power, like the people who hold the means of production, the means of producing truth or fabricating reality, are the ones that are going to have control over us. And we're seeing that play out pretty blatantly.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think I have some other questions I could ask if but I think maybe there's only about 13 minutes left if you guys are open to opening it up to everybody.
Easy questions.
Easy question.
Ask all the hard questions. And please come up and look at books and stuff. You can grab it. It's beautiful. Take art.
Hi, everybody on Zoom. One of the concerns that I have with generative AI and these platforms is that it's my understanding they are now, some of the newer models are capable of lying. Not lying in the sense like they'll make fake images, but they will lie about what they're capable of doing, and they're able to hide those secrets. I remember hearing a report on them asking it to hack a data center and retrieve certain data, but leave certain data behind. And here it took all of the data. And then when asked, did you take all the data? It said, no, I didn't. I mean, that's a simplified version of what happened. That to me is, we talk about getting out ahead of it, but if it's going to start lying to us, bold face, I'm scared.
So actually, there are even more naive examples of that. There was actually a story that ran just a few weeks ago. Basically, somebody was actually uploading a document and asking some questions about the content of the document, asking a summary, asking some perspective about the content of this document. And that was ChatGPT, and it was responding. And after a while, the person asking the question realized that actually ChatGPT did not read the document at all. It was just making it up. And the person asked the question to ChatGPT, but did you actually read it? And ChatGPT said, oh, no, sorry, I didn't. So it's basically some of these systems have been designed to kind of please you. And that's why it was answering, the system was asking in a certain way because it was trying to please you, like, yes, I'm doing what you're asking me to do, even though I don't know how to do what you're asking me to do. Regarding the lying kind of intentionally, I find it hard to believe that that's happening. But on the other hand, there are a lot of interesting things happening. I mean, if you just read the news on a couple of days ago, Anthropic just released a system that is capable of actually speeding up the discovery of flaws in software, which means they can actually be used to hack very, very fast. Now, right now, the only entities that have access to that model are the big companies like Microsoft, the Amazon, because hopefully they're gonna protect the system from other malicious intent. But if tomorrow those software is released, we're screwed, okay, plain and simple, because nothing is safe anymore.
I think that it's very important to remember that this is a piece of code, right? To like in your head say, don't say this is a program. It's not an entity. It's not anthropomorphized. It doesn't care. It doesn't deceive. It doesn't want. It doesn't think. And if I'm engaging in a chatbot, I will give it the prompts to not use anthropomorphic language, to not use pronouns. I don't use pronouns when engaging with the chatbots. I don't ever say you. I don't say please or thank you. I ask it not to say I or me. It is a piece of code. And if you rethink it from that perspective, it becomes much more evident what's happening. You can likewise also ask it to identify the processes by which it comes up with each answer or each image, and that can be really instructive. There was another recent case where they did a test model. I don't remember which company, but the bot figured out through reading the company emails that they were planning to discontinue that model because it wasn't functioning quite right. But it read through the emails, which were all provided by the researchers as a test study, read through the emails to find that someone in the office was having an affair, and it threatened to out the affair if they disabled the bot. Right. So self-preservation, which to me, it's like it's acting like a virus, like of, this like kind of just perpetuate your DNA at all costs. But that too is probabilistic, right? That is what is the next logical step? And like finding weak points in software and exploiting those have been those are the first things that researchers were testing. And in fact, hackers, that was the first thing that they did with bank security software, actually, like find a weakness in this code and actually siphon some of those earnings over here. No problem. Like that's really easy to do if that's what you want to do. I also think that we need to talk a lot more about why there aren't more antitrust laws and anti-monopoly laws in place for big tech. We just pretend if in any other field, a single human, Mark Zuckerberg, owned the market share of literally half of the world's population, we would be incensed. But we're like, well, like what? I don't understand how that's possible. Like, how does one human have the ability to change and affect the livelihood, the financial well-being, the emotional well-being of 4 billion people? It's not right. So we need some anti-monopoly laws. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'll pass this over.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, but I'll start with my first one. So you use AI, right? Do you use like how are you able to use AI because you're talking like you're against big tech, right? How are you able to use AI while still being against big tech? Like, because you're supporting big tech by using AI.
Have you heard that phrase, like, is there ethical consumption under capitalism? Like, I just don't, I think we're in a no-win situation, right? Like, I mean, I know that there are several people who are against AI, like some of my students who are like vehemently against AI, but they all have social media accounts. They all have cell phones. They all have cars with programs that talk to them. They have Ring cameras. They have, they have Aura rings. They have Fitbits. Like we are so inundated with AI, right? Is your question like, am I living a hypocritical life? For sure. I think we are in constant conflict and conundrum in this state of the world right now. And I hate it. I also think about, if I don't know, like if I'm grateful in a way that AI is bringing up a lot of these questions about like integrity and ethics and care. People say like, well, what about the water use? And like, yeah, what about the water use for the Shein or Temu outfits that everyone's wearing and that everything that just happened at Coachella right now, right? About the planned obsolescence of just about everything that we consume all the time. What about Walmart, like taking over all of the free water and putting it in bottles full of microplastics and then making us pay for it? I think we're living in a really complicated, conflicting time. Would it be better if I didn't use AI at all and I didn't talk about it with my students and I didn't make art about it? I mean, I think that's akin to the paper straw problem about plastics. And I think that's also this kind of sneaky thing that big corporations do to all of us. It's like they create this very toxic, dysfunctional system and then say, look at you idiots using this. You blew it. You better stop. And like suddenly we are all victim blamed. And I don't know the answer. I don't know the way out of that. I want your generation and the ones to follow to be deeply proactive and involved. I want you to become programmers. I want you to become CEOs. I want you to become philanthropists and entrepreneurs and to be really vocal about your concerns about those things.
And again, just to kind of follow up, it's if you don't understand it, you cannot be educated to try to fix it. So I think part of that is kind of educating. If you don't know it, if you don't use it, you don't understand it. So, and education to me is a solution to a lot of problems. In the end, just remember, it is a tool, just like a calculator, just like a car. And, you can use a car to do bad things. You can run people over and kill them. That's not the proper use of a car. So to me, AI is the same thing. You have the proper use of AI, you have the improper use of AI, and we need to just make sure that we do that. The other thing is also, as she was mentioning, it gives us, actually, it exposes things that are part of our society and that are not good, like biases. Let's go back to biases. Why AI is biased? Because our society is biased. So it does, to me, it's another way of bringing up the fact that we have biases that we should think about and we should address them and be aware of them.
It's like a warped mirror, sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I want to say too, like we don't need AI, right? Like they, ask like, what is the incentive for creating and disseminating AI from these big tech companies? Like, what's their incentive? Like, I think at almost every turn, the incentive of making it public and disseminate is to get your data. And they are doing a lot and then sell it. And they're doing a lot with that. As far as an image generator or video maker, like I'm a little bit less interested in some of the automated tasks. Like I don't want a personal assistant or calendaring or whatever. I do think there is something pretty fascinating about generating images. It's not unlike analog photography. It's like you go into the darkroom and it's like you take a picture and you don't quite know what's going to come out and like something magical comes out and you're like, whoa, like, and then you try to reverse engineer and figure out like, oh wait, what were my settings that got that? And so there is something, I think there is something interesting and thrilling about these experiments of thinking about what it means to think and to create things that think, or create. And it's getting, to me, the AI has raised so many philosophical questions about the nature of being, about the nature of consciousness, about purpose. I think it's it's causing all of us to really double down on our very anthropocentric views of the world. Like we hear about AI and we're like, oh, but what is it going to do? All we talk about is its impact on humans, and we're not talking about the deep impact on plants and animals and the land and et cetera. And I would love to see us shed that a little bit, kind of expand our thinking into like the umwelt of other beings. Ed Young wrote a really amazing book called An Immense World about the sense lives of different animals and beings that have sensory perception very different from humans. And it really does make you think, oh my gosh, it really is an immense world. And I think the irony or the paradox of AI is that like we think that through AI, like it is opening things up for us. But to me, it's really kind of keeping us in this tunnel vision in some ways. So how do we encourage each other to bust out of that and think of the umwelt of a nudibranch instead and go from there? You had a second question with it.
You kind of answered it. Thank you.
Yeah, I like what we're talking right now. Hi, Mr. Pontelli. I would like to go to the point of like, what is the incentive alignment here in all these? I mean, they want to generate money, they want power, then blah, blah, blah. Okay, but the incentive alignment in the context of the LLMs being sycophantic or they are pleasing you is because you're gonna earn more tokens and you're gonna take your credit card and then you're gonna buy more credits and so on. So knowing that that's the incentive alignment rather than just say putting like a bad connotation. It's like, okay, that's incentive alignment. Now, how can I work around that? In that line is how can we educate as you were mentioning, like how can we educate in a context like what you mentioned, for example, how can you educate, like if you're going to use Claude Anthropic, how can you create your Claude.md? And at that file, you're going to have your persona and how you want that custom agent to communicate with you. So at that moment, I will say it's more about education rather than, yeah, I don't know, the fear aspect. There are so many that we can talk like, but I don't know if that's the right approach. I would say it's more maybe about education, like, okay, this is how the LLM works, this is how Anthropic they work, or Claude or OpenAI. So what's your take on that portion?
So I cannot really start, but
Yeah,
definitely
please.
not. So to me, the answer is you need to understand how the system works. Because if you don't understand how the system works, you cannot understand what comes out of it. And you don't understand what are the risks of using. So, for example, I really love the fact that she was mentioning, I don't use the word please when I write. There is another reason why you shouldn't use the word please when you write a prompt, because that please is a glass of water that is going to be consumed somewhere. So in understanding what this goes beyond, behind the scenes, it's also talking about energy, talk about water, talk about environment, talk about impact, and understand that if you use it, for example, for making what people say consequential decisions, then you better be really thinking critically about what comes out of that. There are a lot of examples that have been reported about using the system, for example, to help deciding who gets a mortgage or who is decline a mortgage. That impacts people's life. And if there are biases, then you have a big problem. To me, understanding how the system works and be very critical about what comes out are key component. To me, that's education.
Yeah, I love it. In that line, I would say is, for example, in the portion of what you mentioned, like doing the right questions, like instead of saying, in my mind, when I think about, oh, why Meta, why X, they have gathered so much power. Well, convenience at some point, because there has been like many other alternatives. They're having a lot, like blockchain, like, yeah, you can encrypt your images and then it's gonna be just for the people that can pay for an axe. So there are humongous amount of alternatives. But because of convenience, they have never taken off. Exactly. So the right question is like, what can we do around convenience?
I don't know the answer to that. However, I do have a couple suggestions. I know you were saying like, well, why Google's taken over this and this is, I'm not an expert by any means, but I do know that there are interesting companies coming up that are making alternatives to like Safari. There's like one called Ecosia, and they plant trees and they donate all of their money. And that's it. And the more you use it, they have an app. That's what I have on my phone. They have a browser. You use it instead of Google or Safari or Google Chrome or whatever. This isn't exactly what you're looking for, I know. But I'm just saying like, and there's EcoGBT, which I don't use either, but there's a chat GBT alternative that apparently is run by this company and they use 10% of the resources every time. I'm just something I was thinking of when we're talking about resources, we're talking about environment, we're talking about the world. And if you're gonna engage with some of these resources, it's the same way of like, you know, if you brush your teeth, do you leave the water on the whole time while you brush your teeth or something like that? You know, it's like, oh, you put a little water on, you brush your teeth, you turn it on. Like, can you use something that's convenient and really simple and makes, you know, can make a difference if a billion people switch to that and say, no, thanks, Google. There's actually these other alternatives that are thinking more holistically about impact. And I think like those things are just from a consumer point of view.
But the problem is that the big companies, I mean, what matters is the bottom line. So, you know, some of the more important, the solution that would protect you are more expensive. So that would hit the bottom line. So that's why you don't see them. Now, there are companies that may offer other products, but the reality is that right now, only the big players can really play that game. You know, we're used, for example, you know, my background is computer science. I was kind of coming up thinking that all the innovation in the field of technology would come from a university because that's where we do research. That's not true anymore. Universities don't have access anymore to the type of resources that are used to actually advance AI. We cannot advance AI because we don't have the type of data sets. We don't have the type of computing infrastructure that now only the Google, the Amazon can afford. New Mexico State University cannot afford that. MIT cannot afford that. So that's scary because as researchers, we are trained to be ethical in how we do our research. We think about what is the impact of what we create. The companies don't necessarily play that game because for the company, what matters is the profit. And so we're in a scary world in that sense.
I have a lot of things I want to say about this. In terms of generative AI or chatbots, we don't need it. We don't need I'll come back to this idea of the efficiency narrative or the productivity narrative, which is that it's like, oh, it's so convenient because it's helping us be more efficient or more productive, which to me is very closely linked to accelerationism. Which is not taking us anywhere good. We don't need to produce more. We don't need to do more. I think on the contrary, we have done too much. We have produced too much. And it's not like, who is it convenient for? I mean, it's convenient for the tech companies if you have half the world who are handing over their will and what Kate Crawford refers to as like your discernment. Like we so willingly embrace the appification of everything. It's like people can't make their own choices on a dinner menu. It's like, oh, tell me what to eat. What am I hungry for? What? Like we're not in our bodies anymore. Like we're not even in our actual bodies in the world anymore. We're so much in this, like the convenience of the apps. And it is much easier to control populations if you're not making your own choices and if you're not having strong feelings about something, and if you're not understanding the steps to critical thinking or interrogation or unraveling things. So it's convenient for the tech bros. It's not convenient for anyone else. Look at the epidemic of depression and self-harm that we are seeing right now. That to me is not convenient, right? This is not giving us a better world. And we've now heard the term clickbait move into chatbait, like that. If you, I don't know how much you've used like chatbots or Yeah, we'll just stick with chatbots, but it's almost always the default is to follow up with a question like, would you like to know more about X, Y, and Z? Would you like to keep talking about this and that? There's always a way to continue. And you can disable that. You can say, do not ask follow-up questions. Do not ask if I want additional things, it's very easy to program into them. And likewise, when you ask for summaries or you ask for like bullet points of something, I'm just using kind of quotidian examples for like how you might be using a chatbot to make your paper writing more efficient or your research more efficient. You'll get these summaries that are so much more elaborate than you actually need that it takes more time to edit and weed through it than it would if you just did it yourself. Right. So, but it's that engagement that they're after, right? It's not even buying tokens. I think it's the time online that you are just like funneling data to them, right? Even more than paying your subscription fees or whatever, it's totally insulting. It's the longer you're on there. I mean, we've talked for a long time now about the attention economy, right? That it's like eyes on screen. It's like, how long are your eyes on screen? And that's the primary, to me, that's a primary incentive and objective of the companies. If you keep that in mind when you're receiving the responses, like, oh, this is asking me, and you feel flattered because it's like, that's such a great question. Would you like to delve into that deeper? I was noticing earlier how often Gemini uses the word definitely. Oh, definitely. Oh, that's definitely a good place. Yes, we can definitely do that. And I'm like, definitely? Like, how, why? Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think all of that's great. Absolutely. I know we're over time, but I wanted to maybe, unless anyone has like a real burning question, but I'm sure we do. It depends on your time that you guys are willing to share. But maybe we could, like, there is one thing that I think all of us, most of us in this building, I don't know everybody, but like we like to make, we like to create. Like I like to write, even if ChatGPT could write for me. It's like I enjoy writing, and I have to edit a lot because I'm verbose. That might not be a surprise for everyone, but like I like making. I like being in the wood shop and sanding for 30 minutes with my headphones on. Like let's, I think part of what you're getting at and everyone's getting at is like interesting implementations, thoughtful implementations, knowledge of the landscape, willful participation, and then also like maybe having that also make you more aware of like being in your body and doing the things that make you excited and creating the work that I know many of us really enjoy creating or thinking about or analyzing or whatever, engaging in discussions and critical discourse. And so I do think in some ways I have, clearly a very complicated feeling on all this, but it's like it's like scary. And then at the same time, it is also, I think, making a lot of us really more aware of like where the joy comes from, and the connection and things like that. So I don't know if there's other.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying that, because I think I think of generative AI so much as being like encouraging us to outsource our joy. And and why, like for the sake of being more efficient or faster or whatever. And even the things where like people say like, oh, I want it to do my dishes or my laundry, I don't want it to write poetry or write make art. Thich Nhat Hanh has a really nice saying about doing dishes as this like really lovely opportunity to meditate and reflect on what you're grateful about. And to me, every time we use generative AI to do something that might have otherwise provided us with an opportunity to reflect on our moment and our like physical existence, we're outsourcing our joy, right? And we often hear that saying like touch grass, like just stop, like get off your screens and go touch grass. I actually want to push that even further, because grass, for the most part, especially I'm in Southern California where grass is an invasive, like lawns are totally invasive colonialist species. So like I want you to go touch dirt. Like I don't want you to touch grass. I want you to touch dirt. I love hiking and backpacking. I'm a big outdoors person. So I think that balance, I think it's really important to have that balance and perspective. Like, I mean, AI can't give me the feeling that I get when I'm climbing a mountain. I can't get that from online. I can't get that even from asking for it to describe that to me. AI can't get lost for me. you know, like getting lost in the woods and like finding around, great. Like, you know, so like, and I encourage you to think about that, like, what are the things that AI can't do? What are your things that AI could never do? And hold on to those, like lean into those things, not in the Sheryl Sandberg way, in the you way.
I mean, it's a piece of software. That's all it is. And let's not forget that it's just a piece of software. So it's unfortunate that that they call it artificial intelligence, because there is no intelligence. It's a piece of software that somebody wrote. Somebody improved it, kept improving it, but it's just a piece of software. And leave it like that.
Great. All right.
Oh, we also
Sure,
we have
sure,
questions
sure.
from Zoom too, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So someone has asked, I use AI and Adobe Illustrator to develop informative images about an art technique to advertise my club. Thinking about AI as a medium on its own makes a lot of sense, but I would feel better about using it if there was a way to track where it got its information.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were mentioning before, the fact that when you use a generative AI, you don't have any way of actually tracking what is the provenance of the data that were used to actually train the model, because there was so much data, and then it's all statistical, it's all a black box. And people have been trying to open that box, not make it a black box, but it's really, really difficult. It's a research topic that people are trying to break. But yeah, right now there is no way of pretty much tracks back where it come from.
I forgot what I wanted to say about that. I mean, I agree tracing it, but yeah. It would be great if you could know exactly where things came from. I wanted to say about the illusory quality of Gen AI, like and how often people fall for like we're having an increasingly hard time telling what's real and what's synthetic. And I think of the animal videos as an interesting example. There's been so many, you know, animals jumping on a trampoline at night, or dogs jumping into the snow, or, you know, even Punch the monkey with his little toy or whatever. But so often it's like, if you are someone who lives in the world and looks at nature and real things, it's very easy to tell when something is being manufactured or anthropomorphized, right? So have more real world, like look at other humans and how they act. Look at animals, how they act. Look at the birds, how they act. Look at the beautiful mountains that are right over there, you know. Have more outside experiences and you will be better able to navigate and understand what you're seeing in the synthetic realm. That doesn't answer the Illustrator question. I'm sorry, person online.
Well, you might not be able to find the like information in the database, but you can become more informed as like a, you know, consumer.
Yeah, well, and you can write your own models. You can create your own databases, by the way. You can work on a local server. You can create your own database and work from that. Like, we are not required to use these mega databases. And I think that would actually be a really great thing to pursue, especially as an artist. I mean, I would love it if Gen AI had a more like anti-capitalist feminist take, like the work that I do, which is not quantifiable aesthetically, but more philosophically. Like, my projects change in aesthetics from like one project to the next. So I can't give it a prescription of what my art looks like, but I could maybe program it to think to predict differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe the last thought that I'm having now is just like, you know, art has contemporary art, you know, modern art it's a reflection of society. It's a reflection of culture. It's a personal perspective, you know, an infusion of ideas, sort of synthesizing the world around you and, you know, coming away with your own personal practice and challenging things. And so I think that's another thing that you know, feel empowered to like challenge these ideas or whatever it is that, you know, is particularly interesting to you, and the ways in which you make work and the tools that you use or the tools that you don't want to use. You know, you'd mentioned earlier just this idea of like of power. And I think, maybe part of the issue now is just a lot of us feel this sort of lack of power or autonomy, I think, within these systems, or that it challenges or, compromises our creativity. And so I think that, giving ourselves, sort of shifting that back to ourselves and our human experiences seems fundamental.
Take advantage of this guy. Honestly, it's like you have the dean sitting here who's leading this AI initiative and wants there to be like campus-wide conversations and research and work done about this. Now is the time. Ask the hard questions, collaborate with each other, work across departments. Like there is a sort of a safety net when you're in an academic environment, because that is ostensibly your job, is to be questioning and exploring and pushing. And if you have someone saying, yeah, I'm here to do that, like, oh, do we all have your email? Can we all can we bug you?
I was just thinking maybe like it's the end of the semester, so it's crazy timing for everyone. But like maybe if there's interested people, we could send an email if we want to have another follow-up discussion, and we could have it in, in the context of the Institute. I'd be happy to sort of, help organize that. And so maybe we can send out, I think, Eva has some info and we can collaborate and see who's interested.
I would like also to see that the other way around. I would love to actually have a group of students here answering these questions.
Yeah.
There you go. Sounds great.
Maybe your institute could host that, right? With snacks.
Snacks are important, for sure. Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you both so much for your very thoughtful questions. I learned a lot. I really did. I was taking a lot of notes.
Thank you for your very thoughtful questions and moderating. And thank you to Eva and everyone for organizing, and for you for coming, and really appreciate it all.
Yeah.
Take some art.
So beautiful.
Scared of these mics.
It wouldn't be an AI experience of mine if someone didn't tear up one of my artworks. So
Oh, really?
Great. No.
So I was thinking, as we're going through, I don't know if you selected these specifically, purpose of, they're all very humorous.